Puren, welcome on People Leader Accelerator today. We connected about a year ago when you joined the People Tech Partners community.
Yeah.
And you had done this lovely introduction, and two things stood out to me as part of that. One is you were one of the original OG talent partners in Europe, which is amazing. And we can't wait to tap into that knowledge. But the second is you mentioned you commute monthly between London and Istanbul. Can you share a little bit more about your commute? And then we'll dive into a bit more about you.
I actually spend lots of my time in London, and because of like most of the work and network, etc., is there. So I was like basically living there. But post-COVID, I take my residential to Istanbul, which is I'm originally half Turkish, half Armenian. But because of my work now, I also travel back and forth almost like 2 times every month and spend in London. So I guess this is kind of the cadence right now.
I love that we have this context on your personal side. For those who don't know you from the career side, can you share more about, yourself and what you're focused on nowadays as related to VC and advising founders and independent search?
I'm coming from executive search, but then I joined Early Birds with the mandate of build out their talent function for almost 8 years ago. And yeah, back then I think there were just like, apart from me, very few other VC talents. I think we won't be more than even 5 people all around the Europe. But right now, I think fast forward all around Europe, there are almost like 35, 40 different VC talents people. So the community has grown a lot. My role was to, build out the talents function. And when I was leaving, I had a team of 5, including myself, also one of the largest VC talent team across Europe. And then the fund, I think, increased size around like a billion assets under management. A year ago, I left. And what I have been doing in the last year, I built my own, I would say, business. 2 main things that I do. One is more like VC related. And I typically work with VCs on helping them to curate their own talent strategy as an offering. From that end, I've been working very closely with Point Nine Capital. This is one side of what I do. And then the remainder is more around early stage founder focus, mostly European founders, UK and across Europe based. I guess have 2 segments. One is like more around talent advisory. So like weekly, monthly check-ins with founders on anything related to leadership team hiring, helping founder out, making sure that they have the right coaches in place, advisors in place, experts in place. And then I also take on search selectivity. But like this side, which is about more around early stage founders, it is more selective. I don't take more than 8 or 9 projects per year. And these are mostly through my long-standing VC network from my previous VCs and the current one, as well as my own like advisory network.
From your vantage point, particularly in Europe, I'd love to learn a little bit more about how you made the shift and your firm made the shift from more talent acquisition to talent advisory. Could you talk about how that shift took place and what that looked like in your experience?
It evolved. In the first couple of years, I was literally acting as more like embedded exec recruiter, which was very helpful because it enabled me to collect lots of recognized behavioral patterns of like what kind of persona worked for how founders to build out their leadership team throughout the scaling journey. I was able to collect lots of patterns and also build out lots of frameworks, also see like what kind of things founders have struggled a lot on leadership hiring as I was very hands-on. But I had the luxury because back then I had a very small portion of portfolio companies, so I can really zoom in and was able to do that in the first 2 years. But then the other 2 years, the portfolio get bigger. And also I had built lots of frameworks and I collect lots of behavioral patterns. So I would say the next 2 years, it was more like zooming out and making sure that I leverage those learnings throughout the right exec recruiter network so that by looking at those perspectives, just making sure that we have chosen the right recruiter search firm in place, making sure that search firm is also processing well, because I've done those by myself in the early years. It was like easy to translate, to compare and contrast and benchmark that. By the time I left, because of the team that I had built, it was like turned out to be very much advisory, meaning I had to like hours with founders within the portfolio on monthly basis just to spend time on what are the challenges that they're facing on the hiring, how does that look like? And then because of the playbooks and frameworks we built up, it was very easy to leverage that. Yeah, I guess it's inclined towards to advisory compared to early years.
It sounds very organic in a way that evolved with the portfolio maturation from embedded exec search to coordinating and selecting exec search partners to third stage of the evolution being working directly with founders on their existing teams and then supplementing their teams. I'd love to follow up. You've mentioned the playbooks, and boy, we're really interested in learning any frameworks or any processes that could potentially be used across organizations. Do you mind sharing a little bit more about like what types of playbooks you created and what, roughly what those look like?
Some of the playbooks that I have built throughout the years, which is more like org design related, like I don't think that I'm able to leverage those. But what survived in those playbooks is to diagnose the capability that the company needs, like where they're at right now. Just to give an example, I have lots of features, and like one feature, for example, let's say this company specifically have a problem with customer retentions. We double click from an org perspective. It would be either you can look at the customer success team or you can look at the product team to understand what kind of capabilities that they have in place. And then you then decide how to increase those capabilities, whether it could be through hiring leaders or it could be through leveraging AI. What stays is the capability linked to the organization challenges, but like how you try to complete or find out these capabilities is not necessarily always comes from hiring now or hiring senior execs right now. I think that did stay.
I'm hearing that it starts with assessing the capability that the organization needs. And then it's kind of open in terms of how to address that capability. Maybe it's exec search, maybe it's a vendor,
Correct.
maybe it's AI, maybe it's developing your own team.
Yeah.
But starting with what is the need is the foundation. Is there any specific framework that you relied on, or was it, completely something that you created yourself? Was there a framework to identify capabilities and stage and needs, or could you point to academic work or something out of a major strategy consulting firm? Like, where did it come from?
It's basically on maybe like three things. The first one is just experience. I think I worked with over 50 founders very closely through like seed to pre-IPO stage. So like there are lots of recognized learnings on these capabilities. What would be the challenge that they face depending on the business challenge they are facing on the capability. That's one. And then the second one is I do also leverage my VC talent network a lot, exchanging with the other VC talent people, etc. I think there are also lots of insights coming from that. And then the third one is just like lots of sources. I read lots of sources, but I've also done a lovable app, which is exactly on that. And it's a free app that you can see on my profile. Based on the organization challenge, it links to the capability that you need to look at within your organization. So it just gives you that flow depending on your go-to-market notion or depending on your either AI native or non-AI native.
Thank you for mentioning that. And let's make sure that we get that in the show notes for our audience. Well, thanks for walking through the genesis of the playbooks, which sounds like it's grounded in your experience with 50 plus founders, the talent community. I'd love to hear about your move from more embedded advisor to now starting your own firm. Would you mind sharing what unmet need you saw in the market? The more traditional embedded VC advisor model didn't fully serve.
One really stood out for me that I see it's kind of an unmet need is missing is ability to be very hands-on and ability to work very closely with founders. And what I mean by that, how I typically work with founders is that, let's say there's a new search, they look for head of engineering. I literally sit together with the founders, like we built out scorecards together. I'm helping them to choose the recruiters. I also have some scorecards to assess recruiters, like what could the exec recruiter look like so that they can compare. And then I sit on weekly update calls every week. And I even source some candidates in parallel to exec recruiters just to make sure that we really cover the market. And I help with assessing. I read founders' interview notes, give comment on these interview notes, like what can they look further? Or sometimes I even conduct assessments in parallel to founders. So it's just like being very hands-on and very close to founders. I guess the downside is that you can do it all with all founders. But I guess there's just like ruthless prioritization of which searches or like which founders companies that you need to choose. But I think being very hands-on and build together with the founders, I think this is like the unmet need that I was seeing in the market.
I'm curious, given your experience with founders, what's maybe a misconception that many founders, when they're starting a search, that you find you need to educate them on or reframe their thinking as they're entering into a search?
I really encourage founders to go very deep on the need. Let's say we hire this person, how this person is going to spend their first 1 year. Can we try to build a pie chart to look for like, what does that really mean? Or like business outcomes, metrics that we're going to check on these hirings after like 12, 18 months. Or the decision-making power, because like some of the roles, head of people or head of product, these are the roles founders are organically very involved in. So it's just like, in order to avoid any clash, what are the decisions that you will be comfortable leaving into this person? And then what are decisions that you will still would like to keep with? It's just like really going deep and create clarity around on the expectation of what we look for. It might change throughout process. That's really fine. I think what's important is that founders spare time on it and intentionally think through that and come up with something. I think this is one of the important ones that I would advise anyone who would work very close with the founders. And then the other one is also making sure that founders meet some top 2, 3 very good benchmarks even before kicking off the search, both for calibration purposes, but also just like help founders to warm up and to understand those kind of archetypes, like what they really care about, what's the motivation, what are the things that they need to assess. So it's just like, that's in a way that making founders getting ready to the search. Yeah, I think these are the top 2 things that I would be mindful of.
I love that. I'm hearing make sure to have founders be thinking further out. Like, we're going to hire this person, but 6, 12, 18 months down the line, what does that really mean? What does that look like? What is success? And then the second one, I actually recommend this all the time too, of talk to a few people up front who aren't candidates, but help you understand what this role is, because it's really hard to calibrate, especially for first time hiring of the role. Like, what am I looking for? What is good or great? And so it helps create that baseline up front to have those initial 2 or 3 candidates for them to talk to. Given your unique perspective living between Istanbul and London, I think you have a unique view of what a global executive is. I'm curious, are there leadership traits that are highly valued in maybe the UK or North America, but perhaps don't translate or backfire even, when looking in hubs like Istanbul or in Eastern Europe?
What I experience a lot when I'm working with founders in like UK or more like German, France based versus more like Eastern Europe founders, one of the very clear distinguishes is that, I don't know, maybe by nature, Eastern European ones and then the Turkish ones, I had to spare more time to convince them. I think there's this like nature of being a bit more skeptic compared to one based in UK or Germany. With my previous one, I had lots of Eastern, and now I had much more on the Western side and also in UK. I guess for me also easier is that back then I need to say one thing from different channels by like different positioning. It takes time for me to build that trust and founder to think it is like reasonable, versus now I think working with the UK founders and with some German ones, I think it's much more easier. Like, if when I rationalize something, if they think it's rational, then they say, okay, let's do it. So it's just, I guess this is like the main difference that I think.
Sounds like warming up that relationship takes more time with some of those founders than the ones in the UK.
I'd love to change tracks a little bit and talk about the topic du jour, or, I guess that's of the day. And this is more of our era, which is AI. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, having been in the talent space and VC for as long as you have, how you're seeing artificial intelligence impact the work that you do and the work that's occurring in these firms.
If you first look at from a recruiting perspective, more like leadership level recruiting, I think sourcing gets super easy. We have tools like Juicebox, and I'm a big fan of Juicebox, and also some others that you can collect lots of information about the candidates even before meeting the candidates. So it's just great, so that you spend your time on assessment on to really get to know the person, like inner motives, things about fear, like fear of the success, where they spend their time. So I think it just becomes much more intentional with AI because you have lots of pre-information so that you can really focus on the person. I think this is like the main impact that I'm seeing on.
So identification of people with the work experience that you're looking for has become easier with AI. But then assessing those candidates is still something that humans really need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen in my work a number of organizations use psychometric assessments like the Hogan or Watson Glaser or other tools like that. How frequently are psychometric assessments used in the VC world in Europe?
Very few.
Rarely.
It has been always on and off topic, and there are cases that I did so, but yeah, I think it's very few. It just mostly comes down like founders assessment or like key stakeholder assessment instead of psychometric tools.
Yeah. Well, I have to imagine, especially in a founder-driven organization, that connection is so important and the culture is so deeply embedded in that relationship.
Yeah.
I'd love to, continue to scratch at this just a little bit more.
Yeah, sure.
So if the identification of candidates gets easier with AI, but the human level assessment, generally excluding some form of psychometric, is where the decisions are made, are you seeing any criteria bubble to the surface repeatedly about like what founders are looking for? Is it different in the age of AI about what founders are looking for from these C-level hires?
I think this is a very interesting discussion topics that I also discussed this with a lot with VC partners. There's this common conception is that let's go to younger candidates or younger people who would have more like fluency on AI. I don't think that that's the case. I think it is more around with AI, we can still have very senior execs as long as they are really interested in spend their 30%, 40% of their time on IC work, like creativity, how to use AI, what kind of AI agents they want to build to optimize their flow work. So I guess it really comes down on the motives and how much of building capability muscle that person still have versus seniority or like years of experience. And because I think this is kind of the conception that I'm seeing, and I don't agree, but I would love to hear your thoughts on this actually.
I think you described it really elegantly around the split between doing, leading, and learning. The leading you tend to find from executives with a bigger company, more mature organizational background with managers of managers.
Yeah.
They tend to be more skilled at leading and communicating, or at least more practiced at it. But in a startup, especially early stage startup, seed stage or Series A, there really has to be this split of individual contributor desire to build. And the new variable that you introduced, which I really agree with, is the learning, creativity, innovation. Like, what tools can I use? How will I apply them? It's interesting as you talk about it, I have ideas percolating. Oh, I wonder what the pie chart would look like for a Series C company versus a Series A company. Now in the age of AI versus before, it's probably a different split.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jess, you probably have a perspective on this as well.
I was actually just reflecting on this myself, and I'm about to write up a LinkedIn post on this topic of how I'm seeing more and more executives building with AI. And I think part of it is this is such a unique moment in technology and tools that it's transforming. And so I think for leaders to really understand that true productivity, how much can we do for the organization, it does help to go build a lovable app or, futz around with Claude or, at least watch how other people are doing it, because otherwise you really don't have a good grasp anymore, I feel like, of like what is work and how does it get done. And so I do think it is a unique moment where sort of that IC element I'm hearing from more and more executives and CEOs who are rolling up their sleeves and making it a regular part of their daily life. And I don't know how long it'll last, but I think as long as like AI tools are sort of leapfrogging every 3 months of what they can do and where the capability is, there is an element of rolling up your sleeves and getting down into it that is more needed now than it has been probably for the last, couple of decades where, what PowerPoint and Excel and the email client, everything can do. And now it's like, oh my gosh, like so much is getting condensed. the power of these tools is really incredible. So I think it's really interesting to see. And there's a term that I've heard lately being thrown around of like super ICs, like everyone's sort of being expected to be more of a super IC. And there is an element of even executive leadership that is being expected to understand what that means more closely. Yeah. On the AI front, so much of being a great talent partner, being an exec search is around having a network and being really good at networking. Has AI touched the way that you think about networking or having like a, sort of vetted global network yourself? Is it yet infiltrating that world, or is AI still kind of pretty separate for you?
This network that I have built, at least, it's shrinked a lot. For example, in the last like 8, 9 years, I've met and networked, when I say like top talent people, around like 4,000, 5,000 network. And out of that 4,000, 5,000, there are this like 15 to 20% that I intentionally keep close, meaning like I occasionally reach out, I connect them with each other, but like this is the network that I always wanted to be close with. And now when I look at this network, I'm seeing that I'm just looking at it and try to refreshing the ones that who are able to adapt it into the new world, meaning like all the things that we talk, like I'm trying to look for clues that they do any IC work, they like to build, like how fluent they are with AI, which kind of, I think, shrink the pool, but I think it's in a good way because there's a whole bigger network now that you can tap in who are AI fluent. So I think in a way it's interesting here.
I'm hearing like for you, the impact is less on how you're using AI to keep up your network and more on that, like you're looking to people in your network who are staying up to speed on being fluent in AI and wanting to stay closer to people who are on that forefront and
Yeah,
kind of thought
100%.
leaders in that space. That makes a ton of sense. I know you're doing a lot of work around this founder advisory space. Every once in a while, there's a founder who's kind of the biggest bottleneck in the executive search process. It might be taking a really long time. You're not getting progress or alignment on candidates. How do you handle a situation where you find that the founder is the reason why you're not able to make progress in a search?
I think like there are two reasonings. One is which is more straightforward, simple, and the things that we just talk. I think it just founder did not find the clarity around what they really want. That's then I think it's very straightforward. You can sit together, the founder, and reflect it together. But there could be another cause, which is I think more, I guess, emotional. I think it's not because founders are difficult, but it's because I think leadership hiring is emotional. These are the people they will work closely with. And specifically for the roles, like I think CPO, like VP people, again, like head of product, VP product. I just like, I think these four roles specifically, founders are very emotionally invested. They want to be like very hands-on on some topics that they know that they need to give it away. I had lots of those situations, and how I typically approach it, two things. I actually have a template that I've shared with founders, and let's say it's a VP people role, and this is a template of manual of me, like how this founder works. Do they like used to come up with the idea and like come up with a suggestion and how to implement it, or this is a founder that they will iterate with you, like you first come up with the idea but founder wants to give input in the first iteration and then the second iteration and then the third iteration, which is fine as long as founder is aware and can articulate it so that the expectations are being managed with VP people. I think that's one template, and then the other template is not manual on me, but it is more around what are the decisions I want to give away, what are the decisions I want to keep in loop no matter what, like what are decisions that I will just going to keep no matter what in the next 1 to 2 years. I think being a bit candid and open around how they feel comfortable. I also share this template and we sit together. But I guess on those two templates, I think the key thing is just founder needs to first feel safe and they have a safe space. These are the topics that they get fear or like feel a bit emotional, and then they feel like they had this safe space to just like I take out those templates and like go over together with the founders.
Yeah, it seems like the structure of the templates is really helpful to articulate things that sometimes go unsaid about their personality or their style or what actually will belong to this executive that they're hiring or not. But I love what you're saying around it's an emotional decision. And I think we often forget that. Like CEOs, they just should know what they're doing and move on with it. And just to remember that they're people and they might have fear around it or consideration that we're just not seeing is a wonderful reminder. Like they're human, and how do we address sort of that psychological, emotional element of it, as well as this, hey, yeah, of course we have frameworks and structures that we can use to work through it.
Yeah.
You're providing such good insight on, the executive search side. When it comes to boards, I know you've seen some first-time boards being set up and created. What's maybe a most common blind spot that you've seen when it comes to people and talent and first-time boards?
I think some boards tend to have too much focus on like hiring, like these are the headcounts, these are the people that we want to hire, and they tend to sometimes advise founders from that angle. But it's just like there are also lots of unknowns around, okay, we hire these people, like who will do onboarding, how we want to make sure that there is this like engagement, performance in place, and you can even have lots of needs around that at Series A. But I think this is also underlooked on the boards, because boards like sometimes tend to look for numbers and like these are the numbers, these are the headcounts, so we need to hire. And then the other one is also expectations around how founders operate. Every founder is like really authentic, and like every solution is very tailor-made. Sometimes founder can have 5 direct reports, but they know how to be very efficient of their time. So yeah, I just maybe approaching it in a more like tailored way on how founders operate, how they execute and deliver.
Sure, and I love that response. And I'm observing this common thread in the way that you operate with as many frameworks and playbooks as you've created over the years, and with your extensive, very impressive experience. It sounds like it really all kind of comes back to the engagement with the founder and treating them like humans who have feelings and emotions. And these companies, they created from nothing, and finding that way to engage with them, to make them feel safe, to help them find their right and left hand. That's where the role of the talent advisor, really differentiates itself. Otherwise, you could just pick up a playbook off the shelf or, grab a template. But the way that you engage with them, it feels different listening to you talk about it. We would love to move into what we call our accelerator round. With People Leader Accelerator, we really love learning and leveraged learning. And I'm sure that our audience would appreciate hearing from you. What 2 sources of learning could you recommend to rising human resources leaders that would help accelerate their careers?
May I answer this a slightly different way? What I can suggest right now is what I do a lot, and I find it super helpful, because everything is changing, and now lots of people try this like AI agents, like operating models are changing, etc. And you can actually find very good podcasts that talk about those, like founders talk about what they build and how are the new org ratios look like depending on the capability, etc. I use Uniscribe. It is a podcast transcriber, and I dump lots of 20MEC, Sastya, or Lenny's podcasts into that, because they also talk around like factual data. So yeah, I literally transcribe that. Then I write a prompt on like just find out the metrics, like calibrations, like capabilities, org-related learnings from this podcast. And then now I'm actually building a whole new playbook for the new age by those podcasts of the founders, that by using AI. I would suggest this.
Oh my goodness, I love that. I want to hear the names of those apps or services one more time.
Uniscribe.co, UNISCRIBE.co.
Uniscribe. Got it. Okay. Yeah. Sounds like a great way to, again, condense and summarize information that would otherwise take you hours and hours to get to by listening themselves. Second question in the accelerator round. What one sentence of advice can you share about how to accelerate a successful HR career in today's environment?
What I would do, I would look up to and find 2 or 3 mentors that I have a cadence of relationship, like head of people, CPO mentor, COO, chief of staff, or CEO office, more like operating rhythm, and then the ideally previous general manager, CEO mentor. So like two different perspectives that people leaders help people leaders to ramp up.
Wonderful. And last but not least, how can our
Mhm.
listeners connect with you?
Yeah, on LinkedIn.
Well, Puren, thank you so much for coming on today. We really appreciated
Thank
hearing
you.
about your initial time in the industry in Europe as one of the OG talent partners. Appreciate your advice and reminder on what working with founders really comes down to of their humanity.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.